All right. So, I'm here today with Joe Lyon, my uncle. Man, I love and respect very much. I've brought you in to talk, to me about COVID. Who are you? Who are you, my uncle?
Well, as in the Odyssey, Odysseas, I am no man, and I am every man.
Yeah, Utis.
Yeah, there you go. So no, I am a physician. My training was at University of California, then at Cook County Hospital, then at University of Florida. I've primarily been involved in critical care, burns, trauma, surgical critical care, operative anesthesiology, but mostly critical care. I've done, I was the director of emergency medicine at UF for 5 years. I was a director of critical care for, I don't know, 10 years? I don't know, a while at UF. Was then recruited up into the Northeast, up to Pennsylvania, was a chair of Department of Critical Care Medicine for a while. Spent time sort of in between all of that, working in Latin America, working in Nigeria with MSF.
MSF, what's MSF again?
Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, sorry.
Gotcha.
Japan, Turkey, Greece, Germany, visiting professor, lecturer, stuff like that. So I've done all that. Primarily, I'm a clinical guy. I've been involved with a fair amount of research and writing, although it's been mostly on pulmonary physiology, infectious disease, not really a whole heck of a lot. In fact, let me rephrase that, essentially nothing on virology. I'm not a virologist. I'm not an infectious disease person, but I have certainly, since 2020, been absolutely intimately involved with the care of COVID patients. So both the medical issues, obviously, and as well as some of the social and political issues, which have probably been the most problematic I've been involved with. So basically, I'm a frontline physician. I've been an administrator. I've been a division chief, a department chair. I've done all that stuff. I've done research, taught, but right now I'm sort of a frontline, not sort of. I am a frontline physician in the intensive care unit, and I've got some the experience that everybody's got with COVID. I mean, I've got to. Unfortunately, this is the third pandemic I've been involved with intimately. HIV/AIDS, initially called GRID, of course, Ebola, and now this one. And each one a little different, and each one a little more frightening for different reasons. But what else? I guess that's me. That's who I am. That's what I do.
Yeah.
And I'm also a member of Physicians for National Health Program, which probably is all you really need to know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's part of what we're missing, a big part. Yeah.
That's a huge part. That's a huge part.
Yeah. So you've seen it, and you're not, you've been kind of around for a couple of iterations of this, of the, pandemic response.
Yeah.
And you've kind of
mm-hmm.
been waist deep in this stuff, for a while. Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. I'm just, thank you so much for, speaking to me and making some time. I know for me, it's been, invaluable to be able to talk to you, about stuff and be, have access to somebody that I can trust, and that, I know has my best interest in mind, and not some not to say, I mean, there's lots of good doctors out there, but, you look online for any information about COVID, and it's just, it's like a flood, right? Like there's so much to parse for, somebody who's not trained in science and, isn't going to go and look at the studies or what, just your average Joe, like, they look up, should I get the booster or whatever? I mean, okay, maybe that one would be a little easier, but
right.
But some of these questions that I have here, go ahead.
No, it's been a challenge. And we can go to the questions you've got. I'd be happy to answer those. But it's been a challenge. So perhaps the best way to sort of begin to address this is to do a 30,000, 60,000 foot view, not just of SARS-CoV-2, which causes COVID-19, which is a pneumonia. The virus is COVID. It's a family of viruses, RNA viruses, that have been seen before. There was MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. It's a disease that's primarily, as it sounds, respiratory, pretty severe, high mortality, seen in the Middle East, I believe transmitted by camels, if I remember correctly. There was the original SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, which was seen in China, 15 years ago or something like that. Reasonably severe, but not, the mortality wasn't quite as bad as I remember. I wrote one paper on that with some Chinese colleagues years and years ago. It's not, it's not new, but the response is what's intriguing. So with HIV/AIDS, initially called GRID, right, gay-related immune deficiency, because initially seen in IV drug users and gays on both coasts. I will never forget. It is, as long as I live, I will never forget. This is how wrong a human being can be. I had just returned from work that I'd done with in Latin America with a new Nicaraguan government in 1981. I'd been there since 1980. Just came back to Chicago, was in my residency, and I remember picking up on my way to what we call morning report, where we talked about the previous night's admissions with the chair of medicine. I picked up my copy from my box, I guess, New England Journal of Medicine, and I was sort of glancing at it as I walked toward the chair's office, and there it was, the two lead articles about this new, unusual disease seen amongst gay men on both coasts. And I remember thinking to myself, it's as clear as can be. Well, this is going to be a nothing burger as well. And boy, was I so wrong about that. So wrong about that. But what happened was, of course, it was quite serious. And the thing that was most impressive about that disease initially was the social stigma associated with it. Now I can't generalize, but I know this has happened more than in just my place. I was at Cook County Hospital at the time. I was a senior resident, and I had faculty who basically said to me, senior physicians, the guys who were supposed to be training me and my residents and medical students, who said to me, "You take care of it. I'm not going to touch this. I'm not going to deal with this because I don't want to get it." And I will never forget how furious I became at the fact that these guys would behave in such a way. I mean, it was tough enough being at that place. It was an institution that was primarily served the poor, black, brown, white, the poor, and there was some significant disrespect by some of the senior physicians toward our patient population. But that was really remarkable. We took care of those guys. We did it. Again, I was a senior resident, but I was a resident. I was a 30-something-year-old doctor in training, and we did everything because not all, but many of the senior-most doctors said, "I want nothing to do with that guy. He looks gay. He looks like a drug user. He is a drug user. Don't want anything to do with him."
So it was because people were. It was because it was a gay population that there was this kind of like detachment or whatever.
True. And when it became clear that there was for some reason that Haitian immigrants had a higher incidence as well. There was some of the faculty would just say, "Go take care of that. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with them." Same thing. Now, what was the reason behind Haitians specifically? There was a whole bunch of reasons. Some of them really, frankly, racist, as to why people thought Haitians might be at risk. But it probably had to do with nothing more than being gay and not being able to show state, things like that. In other words, there's nothing special about Haitians, that's for sure.
Right.
But
right.
that was a opportunity to see the failure of our health system. Now, I had, and I'm sorry to be talking quite so much, but let me just finish
this is what I want.
I had okay. I mean, I had a fair amount of experience arguing that our health system was a failed health system. I mean, the first discussion, the first debate I ever had on that topic was as a 20-year-old undergraduate at UC San Diego, standing on the quad, arguing with one of these young Americans for Freedom members, these really extremely right-wing Republican types at the time. Now they're even more right-wing, but arguing. It was a good argument, respectful at the time, about why our health system is unequivocally, and was at the time unequivocally, not the best, and it has only gotten worse since. And I say this with all respect for my colleague, nurses, doctors, administrators. I mean, the system is set up to give us the results we get. There's not a bunch of stupid administrators. There's not a bunch of stupid doctors or nurses. There's not. Frankly, Odysseas, I would argue there's not even a bunch of stupid insurance executives. As much as I detest those companies, this is the system, and we're getting the results that the system is set up to provide, right? There's a lot of really good folks, but it's a disaster system. HIV/AIDS was the first, maybe, this may not be fair, I may be understating the truth, but it was, at least to me, the first time it was as clear as can be, how screwed up the system was. And as you remember, actually, as you probably don't remember, you weren't there.
As I know.
Yes. The president was Reagan. And he unequivocally refused to address this pandemic at the time that was killing thousands and thousands of thousands. And it was ultimately his Surgeon General, I can see his face, blocking on his name, again, this was a guy who was a pediatric surgeon, known to people who trained me, and he was a kind of born-again Christian type, didn't want to deal with it, and finally could not live with himself, and publicly came out attacking in a polite way his own administration, and saying we have to address these issues. And the way we address this is by addressing the behaviors that lead to HIV/AIDS.
Right.
Everett Koop. C. Everett Koop. Yes. Yeah. C. Everett Koop. That was a guy. An amazing. Again, I don't know him personally. I don't know. What I do know is he stood up and he said, "We have to deal with this." Interestingly enough, at the time, Anthony Fauci was at the National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Disease, a pretty young guy, and the gay population initially was furious with him because he would not rapidly provide drugs that might provide some hope for all these people who are dying of HIV.
Right. And dying quickly.
Dr. Fauci, and died, and horribly. And believe me, I've seen it, and horribly. Fauci really quite rapidly changed his tune.
Really?
And although, he wanted this wasn't because he was somehow anti-gay. This was, in order for me to provide you a drug, I've got to have the studies that prove that it's safe, number one, and efficacious, number two. And that takes some years and studies, randomized, controlled, blinded, placebos.
Right. And it needs to be funded, right? It needs to be funded too.
It needs to be funded. So there was, but even with funding, it takes years. The gay population said, "We're dying. Just do something." Well, so there's two interesting things that come out of this. I know we want to talk about COVID, but two interesting things come out of this. Thing number one is the extreme right in our country, the fascist, and I'm sorry, it is the fascist right in our country, primarily populated in the Republican Party, have begun a series of attacks on Anthony Fauci. Anthony Fauci made mistakes with COVID. Made mistakes. I mean, who hasn't? I've made mistakes, right? But as fast as he realized they were mistakes, he corrected. right? He is a fine physician, to my mind, a decent man. I don't know him, but and trying to do the right thing. He did that with HIV/AIDS, and he did it with COVID, trying to do the right thing. So thing number one is trying to do science the way it should be done. He's been attacked and attacked and attacked. And this latest attack by the right in our country is to bring him in front of Congress and try him. That's what they say they want to do. Fauci clearly, at the beginning of HIV/AIDS, made some mistakes, and he rapidly realized he made some mistakes. He corrected course and became an incredible ally of the gay population.
Did he speak out against, so was that before or after the Reagan administration? Well, Reagan, whatever, decided to acknowledge that it even existed or whatever, that it was a problem, decided to have any response? Was that before or was that after? Did he toe the political line until he got the go-ahead from up above, do you think? I mean, if you remember, if you think, I don't know.
I don't have a clear timeline, but my best sense of what Fauci does, I mean, this is a guy, unlike your uncle, who is politically a pretty smart guy. I'm quite sure he came out and said, we've got to do more, but he didn't come out and
critique the president
as the leader of, and critique the president. He didn't do that. I think he did it behind the scenes, which is actually what he did with COVID as well. The second thing that's quite interesting, again, still staying on HIV/AIDS, is there were no drugs. There were no drugs. So one of the agents, in fact, the first agent that seemed like it showed some promise was this agent called azithromycin, AZT.
Yeah, AZT, right.
AZT was quite a poor drug for treating AIDS. It made you feel horrible, made you feel sick. It was really bad, and it didn't work very well. The only reason I mention it is that some folks who are critical of Fauci now related to COVID have brought up the fact that he allowed, or he pushed, I think the word was pushed the last time I saw it, these revisionists, historical revisionists, he pushed AZT on the gay community and it didn't make them better.
Hardly.
And in fact, the only way you can say things like that, is by not knowing any history at all about what really happened. Yes, it's a poor drug. Yeah, it's a very poor drug. But yes, also it was all we had, and we tried it, and I prescribed it. And when I got needle stuck, I took it, and I promise you, it made me so sick. I thought, of course I'm wrong, but I thought AIDS can't be worse than this, and I stopped taking the drug. Fortunately for me, I didn't get infected. But the point is, it's all we had. There are now for HIV drugs that anyone who's positive can take, and they are effectively normal. They are effectively, it's not cured.
Zero or close to zero viral load. Yeah.
Yeah. High activity antiretroviral therapy. It's called HART therapy. So that epidemic showed some of the flaws, both nationally and locally. The Ebola epidemic is a little different. Although I was asked to go to West Africa with World Health to take care of some of these guys, and although I was prepared to do it, I had a friend, a dear colleague at World Health Organization, who was writing the guidelines for the care of Ebola victims.
Right.
And she called, and because she knew I was going to do this, and she said, "Do not, under any circumstances, do this. You will die. It is utter chaos."
Oh man!
Everybody, World Health, MSF, everybody, it's utter chaos. It's a disaster. Don't do it. So I didn't do that. For good or ill, but I didn't. I had friends who did go, and some of them came back relatively ill. Many of them, some of the ones that I know, came back ill, but serious PTSD, serious really? PTSD.
Yeah.
And then there's COVID.
Right.
So COVID starts, unfortunately, while Trump is the president, and he was worse even than Reagan was in terms of wanting to ignore the disease for political purposes. So first of all, he blamed the Chinese. It must be military. It must be something, right? Again,
that whole
I don't
line.
have all those data, but everything that I've read suggests that it wasn't a virus that escaped from a lab. Number one. Number two, there's his followers. I don't know that I've heard him say this. His followers have argued that Fauci funded gain of function research.
Oh, right.
And the data on that is that is just not what happened. That is not what happened. There were some studies begun by a contracted agency that looked at one of the markers, but it's just not true. So, but what's desired for political purposes, right, is to find a scapegoat we can blame this on. In fact, actually, I should say, let me rephrase that. Not in fact, because I don't think we've got all the data, but it at least appears that COVID-19, this particular SARS-CoV-2, is probably related to the interface, or as we like to say these days, the youth of today like to say, the intersectionality of how about that?
I like
it. Of sort of climate change and infectious disease.
Yes.
That's probably what happened. Probably was from one of those what they call them wet markets. Probably, and it probably jumped from animals to humans. Probably similarly to the way that HIV/AIDS jumped from animals to humans back in the 70s, right? Because that's when it first started. It is fair to say, okay, I mean, I really want to be just as clear as it's possible to be. So while I think it's absurd to argue that this came from a Chinese lab, military lab, and Fauci and NIH funded, that's absurd. It is true, though. It is, and sadly true, that the government of China, when they found out, the People's Republic of China, when they found out that this was real, the physician that brought it to them was silenced. He is now
a governor. I know a little bit more about this part. So one of the things is, so part of this whole thing is that, you've got, the Chinese government isn't run, it isn't run exactly from the top down. You have your central council, kind of like the Presidium back in the, old Soviet days or whatever. And then they send out mandates to these different, not even mandates, actually, directives to the different governors or whatever. Anyway, governors are performance-based. The governor of that province, where it first emerges, the guy who, threw the researcher, or not researcher, the doctor, whatever he was, in jail for to try and keep. So what he was trying to do is he was trying to keep a lid on it. He didn't want to look bad when his performance review came up. He thought, whatever, who cares what he thought? Afterwards, when it becomes clear that it's, it is what it is, that it's COVID, that it's going to be a big deal. And when the higher levels find out about it, that guy is canned. He's in all kinds of trouble. Because he hid it. It'd be like if a state governor tried to hide that. Except in the Chinese model, there's even more incentive because they're rated on performance from above. Right. So it's like, you have your department. You don't want your area to look bad. Maybe you're kind of corrupt, or whatever, there's this sort of incentivized thing, but it wasn't a whole Chinese government policy. That is what I'm saying. Once the rest of the country caught on, once the leaders, of China caught on, they immediately have this big response. So that's all I wanted to interject.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. And I appreciate what you're saying, and I will on this we might have some philosophical difference. The facts are the facts. You're right.
Right.
But the facts as you've described them is what I've read as well. However, as we said about the American health system, the system is set up to get the results that it delivers. And
material circumstances.
I'm enough of a Marxist to know that Marx once wrote that you cannot, in any sense, have socialism without democracy. Now, he didn't define what that means precisely, but a top-down system, a system that is, I know our Chinese colleagues utilize the words and the symbols of socialism, but at least in my mind, at least from what I know and have read and have thought about for the last 60 years that I've been thinking about this stuff, it's a pale socialism, if that's what it is. It is, to my mind, an authoritarian government that uses our symbols, and the result they got is the result that you expect from that system. Now, having said that, my only point,
Look at our result.
And we.
Yeah.
No, but I'm not. It's not. It's not.
I know what you're saying.
That isn't the point. That is just not. Our result we can talk about. It's horrible. We will talk about.
Right.
We will talk about. My only point is that there were some mistakes made, without a doubt, when they realized, the Chinese, that this was an active potential pandemic. The phone calls were made. People at CDC were informed. I mean, they did all that stuff. That part is true. The Chinese took a different tack than the U.S. took when it came to trying to control this. And for a while it worked. Now we're seeing in China now that it really is not working so well at all.
It's very difficult to do. Healthcare in just one country, much like it's difficult to do socialism in just one country. We're
what the Chinese
interconnected.
what the Chinese tried to do. No, it's true. What the Chinese did was they tried to isolate people. If you isolate, you can stop transmission of the disease. Absolutely the right. I mean, there's no question about that, right? You can do it. That's public health 101. But the other things that should have been done, to my mind, right? Now, again, I can be criticized for this because I'm not a public health guy. But to my mind, they should have used the time they had, and they had time, to immunize everybody, and they didn't do that. They didn't do that.
Yeah.
So the bottom line, though, is not to. I mean, I don't want to really talk much about China. They're in a difficult situation.
We should, and in the future we absolutely should, because I do want to compare different responses. I mean, right. So yes, yeah. We certainly, we don't want to get too far afield, but sometime I would like to talk to you about.
Sure. Okay.
All right. Yeah. Anyway,
we can do that. There are now. So what the Chinese did seem to work, and for at least at the beginning, there are now 4 new Omicron variants that are quite infectious and that do not respond to the monoclonal antibodies and appear to escape from some, not all, of the vaccine-mediated humoral immunity that we've got from the vaccine and the boosters and the bivalent vaccine that many of us just got. So we're now in trouble again. But there's a bunch of nuance to that statement. So nuance number 1 is that what we measure is humoral mediated immunity for the most part. Are there antibodies? Do they neutralize the virus in vitro? It's a little harder to look at the other component, the other arm of immunity, which is cellular mediated immunity. And that probably still is stronger than the humoral immunity, and probably still more active than the humoral immunity. So that's thing number 1. Thing number 2 is, even with the weaknesses of the vaccines in the face of the present 4 variants, people who are fully vaccinated, although they can get infected and although they can transmit, they are much less likely to get hospitalized, end up in the ICU, and end up dying. Without a doubt. So it's worthwhile getting vaccinated, fully vaccinated. Now, the people who are there
with
are people,
with the booster, we should be clear, with the booster, with the bivalent booster as well, fully vaccinated all the way.
Bivalent booster as well.
Yeah.
Yes, and I would argue, even if you've had coronavirus, even if you had COVID-19, even if you've gotten the pneumonitis, gotten sick with it, after your episode of infection is over, I would still get immunized. Because so-called natural immunity, I mean, there's no such thing as natural versus unnatural immunity. There is immunity, full stop. Some people have argued, some people of good faith, but some of not quite such good faith, have argued that no, natural immunity is what we really want, and the vaccine is artificial, so we're not going to do that. And say, are you out of your minds? There's only immunity. You have it or you don't have it. And it's not a 1 or a 0. There's actually gradations. But you may have been initially infected with the wild type virus when the COVID first started, and you may have humoral immunity to that and cellular immunity, but it may well not help you against the Omicron variant, or at least help you as much. So what you want, whether you've been infected or not, is to be vaccinated the full amount, up to and including this bivalent latest vaccine. It doesn't give total protection. There's no such thing as total protection, but it does provide protection against, much protection against severe illness, hospitalization, and death. That's that piece. The second piece is, what else can you do? I mean, do what the Chinese tried to do with lockdowns. I mean, again, that's public health 101. It makes sense. But how long can you do that? And so they're facing that, and so are we. So I think the thing we have to do, and the thing that I personally do, is I do not go anywhere without a mask. I do not go out. Now, if I'm outside with other people, that's okay. I mean, I try and keep my distance. But inside any place, when I go to the hospital every day, I wear a mask. Every day. Because it's just too risky. First of all,
and what kind of mask? What kind of mask? We should say that too.
I mean,
a KN95.
I just wear a regular surgical mask.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't. Mask. I mean, I have them. It's just I wear a surgical mask. But a KN95, if that's what you've got, that is better. It is better. And when I go into a room, I mean, okay, so I do take some chances. For me, to wear a KN95 hour after hour after hour, all the time that I'm in the hospital, it's a challenge, just for me. So I wear a surgical mask all the time, less of a challenge. If I go into a room where there's a known COVID patient, I put on an N95 mask and take off the other mask. And then when I come out, I put the other one, get another one, put it on. But I'm always masked. I've gone with friends and with my wife to restaurants, who try and sit outside. But obviously, like you're in Wisconsin now, you really can't sit outside. So what we do is when we wear the mask inside, we try and get it, if we're inside, we wear the mask when we go inside, try and get seated as far away from others as we can, take it off while we eat, put it on when we're done. It's not perfect. None of this is perfect.
No, we're managing risk.
It's just the best you can do.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. You're managing risk. So I think that the issue is that this virus, it's like there's a advertisement on television that says, I run 15 miles a day, and the announcer's voice comes over. Shingles doesn't care. I eat nothing but natural food. Shingles doesn't care. It's an advertisement for a vaccine. The point is, coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, doesn't care that you don't believe in it. It doesn't, not you, but people
that
don't.
Anybody doesn't.
SARS-CoV-2, yes, it is simply a virus, and it will do what it will do. And all we can do is try and mitigate response. So masks, hand washing, distancing, vaccination, and if you get sick, if you can,
stay home.
I know this is a stay
fraught.
home.
It's a fraught
this is
subject.
Part of the problem.
Yeah.
It is because our president, this just happened last week or the week before last, just pushed a bill through that refused to give. Let me rephrase it. He pushed a bill through Congress that made rail workers stay at work instead of going on strike for sick days.
Right. When they have COVID.
Come on.
Yes.
Yeah, when they have anything.
Yeah.
It's not just COVID.
Right.
When they have anything.
Right.
It's just wrong, right? And the mantra was, well, but our economy's kind of a little bit of a problem, and if these guys go on strike, well, it might hurt the economy. And so my response is, dude, well, actually, it's not quite what I said. I said, motherfucker, if that's the case, then take these rich guys, including Warren Buffett, who owns parts of these railroads, and have them pay them to have sick days. It takes a little bit of their profit, but who cares?
Big deal.
I mean, I don't care. So it is a fraught topic. There's no question about it. But that's what if you can, that's what you should do. You may not be able to. So this is not going to go away. And my best sense is, in fact, not only is this not going to go away, yesterday I was looking at data that suggested the number of, not suggested, it's pretty clear, that nationally the number of cases is going up, the number of deaths is going up. I'm sorry, not cases. Cases too, but hospitalizations and deaths are increasing by significant double digits. So
we're not really tracking cases. I mean, we're tracking a little bit of cases, but we've kind of abandoned that whole model.
Right, because with home testing, how do you report it? You don't report it. But hospitalizations and ICU admissions and deaths, oh yes, those you can track and know. So those appear to be going up again. So one expects that this will become, yet again, in this this cycle, we're now at in the winter cycle, it becomes a problem for us again. So, okay, so you say, okay, but you've laid out some things we can do and they might work and they do work. But, I live in the South and every single day I have people I take care of that come into the ICU themselves or with their loved ones. And I ask them, are you immunized? And what is today? Today's Tuesday. Sunday morning, get called down to the emergency department for a lady who's in respiratory distress, needs to have her breathing supported with a machine, blah 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 blah. And her husband's there, nice guy. Talk to him. We get his wife squared away, and then I turn to him and ask, have you both been immunized? And he says, absolutely not going to. I lost 3 friends to that vaccine. And so I said, well, okay. Look, it's not my point to argue with you here. I'm here to take care of your wife. But number one, you didn't lose 3 friends to the vaccine. You may have lost 3 friends, not to the vaccine, though. No, the vaccine would have saved them, could have saved them. This may have been affected when it happened. Who knows? But you need to be, you're older. You need to be immunized. Your wife has got multiple comorbidities. She needs to be immunized. I said, and I give them the lecture. I talk to them. I talked about this, about why it matters, sort of like we've been talking. And I then I point to the turned off television on the wall up in the ED, and I say, the problem is that idiot box and the misinformation that's been distributed. I said, I name names. I name names. I said, by Fox News, by One American News Network, by Trump and the people associated with Trump. I said, look, I tell them, I'm sorry. I know I don't know you well enough to have a political talk with you, but this impacts not only your health, but my health and the people that you love and the people that are all around us here in this ER. In this emergency department, if you infect them, who's going to be here to take care of you? You're not vaccinated. You don't wear masks. You don't believe in it. Quote, believe in it. Shingles doesn't care.
They're misled.
Right?
They're misled. It's not, and as long as you have these outlets that are pumping out, and truly, in my opinion, I hold not equally culpable, absolutely not, but I hold, these other, the sort of corporate Democrat side of the media is not all, they're better, but they're not that much better. They're towing a line too. And truthfully, it's like, when you let that stuff fly, when there is no, I don't know. I don't know what the alternative would be, but when you have this flood of misinformation that's coming from the sources that people trust, it's really hard. You're simultaneously expecting, not you, we as a society, the greater, and actually not even we, the ruling elites are expecting people, or if that's even what they expect, maybe it's cynical, people are expected to become medical experts, make these decisions all for themselves. Oh, I'm going to get the vaccine. I'm not going to get the vaccine. I'm going to do this part. I'm not going to do that part. Then meanwhile, they have this other thing, blabbing at them, telling them, oh, hey, the vaccine's fake. It's going to kill you, whatever. And then we expect them to make a rational decision based on that. When truthfully, how, you ask me how to build a bridge. I've got the basic idea, but if every American had to build or every United States citizen had to build their own bridge anytime they wanted to cross a bridge, we'd have a lot of people falling into the damn river.
That'd be a problem.
So I don't know. That's the maddening part for me. Is if we don't, and I don't know what the answer to that is, but Oof. But
part of the answer, part of the answer is there has to be accountability. It's not. It is true that people are misled, and I'm willing to give wide berth to our fellow citizens who've been misled. On the other hand, and there, believe you me, there is another hand. I have never been threatened with physical harm as much as I've been threatened with this nonsense.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Screamed at and cursed at by young women because I wouldn't give their dad ivermectin to the two daughters of this man.
No.
And with one other guy, his dad was dying. He was a 30-something-year-old guy, big muscular guy. I've been around the block long enough. You can kind of tell when a guy is like, milliseconds from taking a swing.
Right.
Body posture, tone, everything, just the way he stood. I've also done martial arts, so I sort of know what the position is when you're getting ready. And he was ready. It's like, give me a break. I'm completely uninterested. If you don't want my help, do not come to me for help. That's fine. I understand. But the other thing is it's not just. But those guys are misled, and so I do.
No,
I do
but
kind of
you're right. You're right.
So
here's, I think, two things. One is we need public education, and maybe we need to not let a major news network be. I don't know. I don't trust necessarily the U.S. government any more than depending on who's in charge, right? Like any more than whatever the news network to set that. But maybe some bare minimum, for God's sakes. I don't know. But public education. If people aren't educated, they cannot know. They're easier to mislead.
Educated, they're much easier to mislead. And it's true that public education is problematic. And that's really a different topic, but certainly related.
You're right.
But the other piece of this is that, there was a period in our history around the time of Andrew Jackson with the Know Nothing movement where people thought that they knew just as much as anybody else. Now, admittedly, medicine in the 1810s, 20s was different than it is now, for sure.
Right.
But the movement in the United States, that tendency in our country to think that elites are just are scum of the earth, that they don't know anymore. And I've had people tell me that too.
Yeah.
Arguing with me about medical therapy. Well, it doesn't matter that you've got several degrees. I did my research. Well, let me tell you something, dude. Not you, dude. Them, dude. Your research, you go to the internet, you find what you find. Maybe you're sitting on the toilet while you're doing your research on the internet. I am by no means the cat's meow of academic physicians. But, I've done major textbooks, 2 of them in multiple editions. I've got about 200 papers, peer-reviewed, and abstracts. So I've done my share. I think I know what research is, right?
Right. You can read a scholarly paper and easily digest it.
I can figure it out.
Relatively.
You can't. This stuff is not that simple. If it was simple, it'd be easy, but it's not. So you do have to, at some point, be willing to have confidence in somebody. And I have way more confidence in Anthony Fauci, whatever his flaws, and in the National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Disease, in the CDC, who've made mistakes as well. Because when they make the mistakes, they tend to try and correct them. That's the nature of the scientific method. Yeah. There are political pressures there. I know it. But I'm telling you, America's frontline physicians, that organization headed by a woman whose name I can't think of right now, Simone Gold or something like that. Those are not the people that we should be listening to. Those guys are dangerous. And what they do is they spew enough information that sounds right and sounds easier, and sort of builds on conspiracy theories and people say, oh, okay, this makes sense to me now. But it isn't quite like that anymore, as you just mentioned about our Chinese brothers and sisters, than it is to say the Chinese did this on purpose. The system is set up for the result it produces. And if we want to change things, that's true here, that's true there. If we want to change things here, we have to look systemically and decide how we want to alter things. You can argue for bad people. And I know, there are some bad apples.
Sure. Right. But it's a system.
But in general, it's a system. And that's what we have to use. Marx, again, I was going to say years ago, a little longer than years ago, like 100 and some years ago, was this may be an apocryphal story. I'm not quite sure. But was
Back when you were a young man. No, I'm kidding.
Back when I was young. There you go. It says, Professor Marx, you argue that the working class is the motor force of history. Well, if that's true, then why don't the workers simply change the world into a better world? Full stop right now. And Marx, again, perhaps apocryphally, sort of smiled and chuckled and said, well, my friend, it's not quite that simple. Yes, the working class is the motor force of history. But in a certain way, think of them as like a small dog at the end of a pony cart. They can go a little ahead, a little behind, a little to the left, a little to the right, but they're pulled by this pony cart. That's the force. That's history. That's all the other actors in history. They can't make all that stop, but they can impact it. And so I think, we've got the same issues. We can't make everything stop on a dime, change on a dime, but we certainly can try and alter things and
materially alter things. Materially alter things, not just ideas, but the physical reality of the matter. But creating a national healthcare system, for example.
Man, I have argued for that. I will go to my grave and we won't have it. But I've argued that since I was 20 years old. I am now 70 years old, right? I mean, it's like 50 years. I mean, I know I've done some good work, but it feels like gotten nowhere. I mean, so the material things that we can do as we approach this next surge of COVID, again, because that's sort of
right. Zooming back
mask,
in. Yeah.
Zooming back in, right? Hand wash, distance, immunize, mask when you're inside. Again, should you not go out anymore? Well, I don't think so. I think you've got to be able to live a life somehow. You just can't stay isolated it's like, this is not the zombie apocalypse yet. This is not, the end of the world yet. Probably never will be.
Right. Well, and most people don't have that option. Most people don't even have that option. You know what I mean? It's not like for the vast majority, it's like, what are you going to do? Stop going to work?
No. If you have to go to work, then you go to work masked. You wash your hands. You do the best. You can do the best you can, but you don't ignore the signs, and you get immunized. That is available for everybody right now, and should be done. So anyway, that's my plan, and I'm sticking to it.
Part of I think why I want to do this, I think maybe why we both want to do this is to give that sort of that level of guidance, and sometimes it's as simple as being like, yeah, you should still be doing it. It is, and I think probably a lot of the people that we're speaking to, I hope, will reach the widest audience possible. But it's like it's hard to know what to do, but there's a lot of people that want to do it right. When they when they removed the restrictions, I think they did some polling, maybe something like 44% of people were uncomfortable with the speed at which restrictions were removed. And I think, are just worried about it. I think that those folks, right now we can't change maybe the macro, we can't change the big picture. But even if we can give some guidance to people, and how to navigate the world, we're not going to have national health care tomorrow. But if we can, for everybody, for us living through this, I think there's a really big value, to getting to talk to someone like you and get some direction to be pointed. So I think that even this basic stuff, like, yes, you should be wearing a mask. I do think that's important. I really do.
Well, and the thing I think what you say that I would say is, when this goes out wherever it goes out, and if you put a link on your website so that people who have questions can send them to you, you can send them to me.
Okay.
And I'll answer them as rapidly as I can. I'm happy to do that. It's not like I mean, again, I think most physicians and most nurses are like this. None of us went into this because to get, I mean, everyone's got to have a salary, I mean, everyone, but to get rich, like every time I say something, I have to be paid. No, 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 no. I would be happy to do that if that's of help to people. And just with a caveat that I'm a reasonably well informed physician. I'm not a public health guy, and I'm not Anthony Fauci, but a good chunk of my work does relate to infectious disease because I'm in the ICU. I mean, that's a huge swath of what we do, and I have been caring for these guys. So happy, I'm happy to do that if that be of help. The other thing I think to point out is we've not really talked about long COVID.
Oh, yes. I want to ask you about that. I personally want to ask you about that. Yeah.
There's a paper was just published in I think it was in Science. I read it and downloaded it. I can't remember the citation. But so there's no clear clue why long COVID exists, right? What is this? Well, this paper looked at autopsy in 40 patients who died of COVID. And they took, I've done autopsies when I was a student. And when you do autopsies, you take all the organs out, and from every organ, liver, lungs, spleen, kidneys, name it, brain, you take tissue samples. And then they used immune studies to look for virus. And the virus was present everywhere. Everywhere. It's not just in the lung, it's everywhere. And so the issue is long COVID is probably, again, this is one paper. We're really not sure what the hell's going on with long COVID, but it may well be related to an ongoing infection or immune response. And so there is now, as far as I know, I only know of, and I could be wrong on how many studies are, but there's at least one study ongoing utilizing Paxlovid, antiviral therapy.
Really?
That we use for chronic COVID.
Really?
Don't know how it's going to come out, but that's
sure.
the study.
Sure,
right?
but
so
wow.
it is a huge deal. And in fact, when people say, well, not people, when the owner class says, I can't get people to work. Where are all the workers? What's going on? We must have given them too much money. My response is, dude, first of all, 1 million of us died. Yeah, some of them were older, but my youngest patient who died in my arms was 19 years old. But two, some 20 to 30% of people who have COVID have long COVID, and some good percentage of them cannot function. So where are the people? That's part of the answer. The last thing I want to say about this, if I may,
yes,
we touched on it, and I was thinking about this earlier, is one of the things that just annoys me and annoys my colleagues, nursing physicians, beyond words, is this bullshit that we're heroes. We are effing not heroes. We were never heroes, right? We were people who knew how to do our jobs, and we did our jobs to the best of our ability, trying to take care of our people. And our people is broad, right? Americans, non-Americans, we don't care, right? And it's administrative types, it's corporate types who branded us as heroes, and now they don't want to give nurses a pay raise.
Right. If
and
people,
now
that's my thing.
Heroes,
if the people who are saving you from, if the people, the doctors and the nurses and and actually even all of the staff of the hospital, from the janitors to the person at the door,
exactly
whatever. Right. You can't. You're just going to clap for them, like. Give them, let them negotiate. Same thing with the train workers. The train unions. It's like, the infrastructure. Everything's, okay. You got these people out here doing it. Take care of them. At least bargain with them in good faith. If nothing else.
And it's not just those of us in hospitals, right? It's retail store, it's delivery people. All these people were called essential and they were heroes. But man, as soon as this was over, it's like the corporate sector needs its profit. So that is unbelievably painful for all of us to see this happening. And now it'll likely happen again. And so I don't know what the response is going to be. But I do know a fair number of nurses who have said, I will not be treated this way again by my patients, by administration. And if they think they can do that, I'm gone. And there'll be nobody. I mean, that's the key. That's the point here. There'll be nobody left to take care of you, person who's listening to this. If this continues, You can threaten me all you want. I mean, like, I've had my issues, right? I've been shot at. I've been this, not for COVID, for other things when I was in Latin America, but I mean, so it's like, but there is a point when I'm going to just say, you know what? Enough is enough. I'm just uninterested and stop. And that's true of me. It's true of nurses. It's true of everybody. So people we do have really skilled practitioners, docs, nurse practitioners, PAs, nurses, right? I mean, all of us. And you're right. The environmental service guys get the short end, but I can be gone and the hospital keeps going. If environmental service is gone, hospital stops. So everybody in that hospital is important. And if not you guys, not you, I don't mean you, of course.
Sure. Yeah.
But if people think that it's cute to threaten, that it's cute to insult, like in August of 2021, at the beginning of August, I went into the hospital. I didn't leave till September, basically. That was my commitment to our people, right? Didn't matter. I don't expect anything, but I don't expect anything special. But I also don't expect to be threatened because of it or insulted because of it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's the thing. I mean, and the problem is this is going to happen again. I'm not trying to say woe is me, nothing like that. I really though worry about my nursing and especially my junior nursing colleagues, because they're fresh out of nursing school, they're bright, and they want to do this, and then they get insulted and they get threatened. It's like, Jesus, you can't run a place without them. So that's the thing I think we need to think about and talk about in the future.
Yeah. Yes, man. I'm so with you. It's really frustrating. That's we got our local nurses we're fighting. Actually, let me give people something actionable. I don't know how or where, if there's a labor struggle going on. I don't know if you have the time, if you have the bandwidth, if there's anything you can do, do it. Write them a letter. Write the hospital an email. Maybe it won't do anything. I don't know. Or find somebody who's working on it. If you can support labor, do it. If there's a way that you can find to pitch in, whether it's even just not crossing the picket line. A lot of people go to Starbucks right now. And I get it. Whatever. It's we all make compromise. Whatever. They're having. They're trying to punish their labor unions. And this is much bigger issue, but I don't know, man, if you have not you literally, but to the greater you, if you can support labor, do it always, solidarity, right?
Yeah. Exactly. The nurses in the national health system in Britain are striking to try and get a decent wage.
Right.
In 2014, I believe it was 14, Karen Davis, professor of public health, published an article in Healthcare, I believe it was, looking at the top 11 health systems in the world. Mm-hmm. What was number 1? What was number 11? And why? It was a very detailed, beautiful study. At the time, the British National Health System was the number 1 system in the world. Right. Now, it's fallen because the conservatives didn't fund it. Right. They've got all sorts of problems. You can be the best 1 year and not so good 3 years later if funding goes, if if you don't have adequate personnel, all that stuff. Right. So actually, but in that study in 2014, like in 2007 and 9 and I forget 10, there were multiple studies. The U.S. was number 11. We are the worst of the worst, year after year after year after year. The most expensive, with the worst, some of the worst outcomes. Again, not stupid people, not administrators that are stupid, not nurses, not doctors.
No.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
It's the system. The system is set up to generate profit, right. And that's what it does. Not to generate health care or health, which is more than just being in hospital.